and killing 4 Israelis in a suicide bombing attack. Now, we heard before the comparisons to Hitler. I want to show you. People don't realize this about Hitler. Hitler, in order to get his people to kill the Jews, didn't just wake up one morning and say, kill them because I say so. He used the identical justification that the Palestinians are using today. And I want to read to you from the end of a chapter on Vienna. And listen to what he writes here. In this chapter, he shows his whole metamorphosis and how he developed a realization of how dangerous the Jews were. And he writes at the end of this chapter, in this case, the only salvation remaining was war, because if the Jew is victorious over the people of this world, then it will be the funeral wreath of humanity. Similar to what we heard from the Palestinians. I believe today I'm acting according to the will of the Creator. When I defend myself against the Jew, I'm fighting for the work of the Lord, Mein Kampf. Defend myself. Hitler told his people also that genocide of Jews was self-defense. The identical legitimization the Palestinians are using today. Now, how do you get this message to children? Take a sharp turn here. Children aren't listening to religious leaders. They're not listening to this type of ideology of what's going to be in heaven. I'll show you how they do it for children. This is a children's program, educational TV on the Palestinian Authority. The hero of this program is this talking puppet named Tarabishu, and this was one of the programs where Tarabishu is talking with the children, and obviously by the age, this is targeting preschoolers. Now listen to this conversation.
طيب هلقيت لو اجالك ولد عباب بيتك في شجرة وقطعها ايش انت حتعمل له؟
أنا أصلاً عندي شجرتين عباب الطار.
لو اجى ولد صغير وقطع لك اياها ايش انت حتعمل له؟
أعمل له؟ بتقاتل معاه وبعمل طوشة كبيرة وبلم كل الدنيا وبعمل طوش وبجيب كلاشينات وكل الدنيا بعملها مجزرة عباب الطار.
Okay, for preschoolers, a conflict over a tree, and instead of teaching, you discuss it, you talk it over. No, you get an AK-47 and you commit a massacre. This is, now to the average person it seems so ridiculous, but to us this is not an aberration. This is the message. It's a message of violence, it's a message of killing, and they want the kids to get this message even before first grade. This is on preschool television. They also use music a lot, and I'll give you one example. We've had tens and tens of music videos promoting violence through song and dance. Here's one example.
ماذا فينا الأقصى الغالي هز الأرض وشيل حجار مش رح تسلم يا صهيوني من بركان حجار بلادي مش رح تسلم يا صهيوني من بركان حجار بلادي انت الهدف قبال عيوني وأهلا ومرحب باستشهادي
Okay, the focus is the young ones, and again, there have been dozens and dozens of music videos like this. This one ran for 3 years on Palestinian television, 4 years. Most recently, we saw it June of this year, since March of 2002. These things don't leave part of this total indoctrination of the kids. Now, Shahada, something which is called martyrdom, suicide terror, this is something that is probably the most difficult for Western mind to understand, because in the West, we automatically assume that the love of life is the greatest value, and that life is the greatest value. And we misinterpret the motivation of suicide terrorists because we are looking through our glasses. We're looking through our values, and you have to see what their values are. You have to look at it through their eyes, through their mind, in order to understand the motivation. And when I write here, when love of death replaces love of life, this sounds so ridiculous. It doesn't make sense to us because life is the ultimate ideal. I want you to see what they have done. When suicide terrorists blow themselves up and kill themselves, it is not an act of desperation like the media and the world assumes. It's an act of aspiration because they have put dying to be the ultimate value if you die the right way, which is killing the infidels with you. And I want to show you this in their own words. This is a senior religious leader on Palestinian television. He speaks very slowly, so I'll just read to you what he says. The believer was created to know his Lord, to fulfill Islam, to be a shaheed, a martyr, to die for Allah, to intend to be a shaheed. If he doesn't hope for shahada, he will die as in the Jahiliyyah, which is pre-Islam. If you don't want to die for Allah, you're not a good Muslim. This is the message. Now, I'll give you another example. This is from a different religious leader. Listen to what he says.
الشهادة شرف لا يناله إلا من رضي الله عنه.
Okay, Shahada is the honor. Dying for Allah is only something that special people achieve, only those people who Allah allows. In other words, death is being put more valuable. I want to show you a fascinating example of this. This is when Israel had threatened to kill Arafat. Listen to their response.
وأما التهديدات التي يثيرها هذا السفاح النازي ضد الرئيس عرفات فنقول له لسنا كأمثالكم فإننا لا نريد الحياة.
We do not desire life. In other words, don't think you're going to scare us by threatening. We do not desire life. If you threaten to kill President
أما إن
Arafat,
كنت تهدد الرئيس ياسر عرفات بأنك ستقتله فنحن ندعو اللهم ارزق الرئيس الشهادة.
okay, we will pray, yes, we want him to die. It is totally turning our ultimate value when it said death becomes the ultimate value and no longer life. Now, if you're telling someone he's going to be dying, you've got to promise him the rewards. And I want to read to you from a different sermon. When the shaheed meets his makers, all his sins are forgiven from the first gush of blood. He sees his place in paradise, he's shielded from the great shock, and he marries the 72 dark-eyed maidens, the virgins of paradise. Now, the world has all heard this story of the 72 virgins, and because it makes no sense to us, most people laugh and assume it's just a tale. I want to show you some things for the Palestinians and for suicide terrorists. This is reality. This is reality, and if you want to get into that mindset, imagine these young men are believing they are going to 72 virgins. I want to show you how they brainwash the people. Here's a music video. Saw it the first time in 2000, the last time, August 22nd, 2006. This has been running for 6 years on Palestinian television. Now look at this message here. Story starts off with this young couple. Notice she's shot in the back. Israel shoots people in the back is the message here. But look what happens to her. She doesn't die. She goes straight to martyr's heaven, and she joins the other maidens, the other virgins of paradise, all dressed in white. And now the male shaheed comes along. He likewise is killed. She became one of the virgins of paradise, and he gets all the virgins of paradise. This is their ideology, and I say it seems ridiculous to our mind, but remember, they've been running this for 6 years on Palestinian television, brainwashing the men to expect this. Now, what's the result of this? When the men go on suicide terror attacks, they leave statements like this.
بالغالي أم الحنون أحييكم تحية إجلال وإكبار وأنتم تزفونني إلى الحور العين شهيدا.
Okay, this was his farewell. We've had dozens of these farewells. Very often they talk about their motivation. They are going to the maidens of paradise. Not just the boys and the men who do it. Listen to the mothers. The whole society is caught up in this. There's a mother of 2 terrorists. Both were killed by Israel. Listen to her describe the deaths of her 2 sons.
هم يعني يتهمون الأم الفلسطينية بأنها تكره أبنائها وهي التي تدفع بهم يعني إلى الموت.
لا احنا ما بندفع أولادنا للموت، احنا بندفعهم للشهادة في سبيل الوطن، في سبيل الله. وما بنقول لهم الشهيد اللي يجي العزيك، احنا اللي يجي الهنيك في عرس ابنك، احنا الهنيك في شهادة ابنك، مبروك عليك الشهادة. احنا العزاء بكون عندنا.
For us, the mourning is a wedding. It's a wedding. We congratulate you. We give out sweets. And why is it a wedding? Because they are convinced likewise that their sons are going to the 72 maidens of paradise. It's so foreign to us, but this has become something that they've all fixated on, this going up to the maidens of paradise. Now, the Palestinians didn't even leave the brainwashing to death from their kids. Here too, there's this intensive brainwashing running for years to convince kids likewise. And of course, kids aren't interested in the virgins. How do you do it for kids? Here's an example of a video that ran for 4 years on Palestinian television to convince young boys, young teenagers, to want to go out and die.
أرضي
How sweet is Shahada. Kids are brainwashed, kids are taught dying for Allah is sweet. And again, this ran for a few thousand times on official Palestinian television. I'm going to show you another video. This one started in 2001. We saw it on June 28th and 29th of this year. Look what they're promising kids in paradise here. First of all, it starts off with this particular slide. I'm waving to you not to say goodbye, but to say follow me. Who's it signed by? Muhammad Adura. Who's Muhammad Adura? He was the boy who was killed in the crossfire in the Gaza Strip. Everybody in Palestinian Authority knows that name. He's calling to them not to say goodbye, but to say, follow me. Follow me to paradise. And then what do they show? After they say follow, they show you an actor playing with a kite, going to a Ferris wheel, running on the beach. He is the child martyr, and he has a Ferris wheel. The kids in Gaza don't have Ferris wheels, but they're promised if you become the martyr, if you become the shaheed, you're going to have a Ferris wheel like Muhammad Adura, and he is calling you to follow him. This is ultimate child abuse, literally brainwashing kids that death is the ideal. It's not just on TV, it's in their formal school book education. There's an 8th grade book published in 2002. Oh, heroes, do not talk yourselves into flight from the enemy, because your enemies seek life and you seek death. Straightforward, young children, 8th graders, your enemies seek life, but you seek death. This is a higher value. It's so absurd to us, doesn't make sense, but you have to understand this is what it's all about. The Hamas website, the same messages today for very young children. There's a picture of a young girl, and what does she do? She gets into a car with Israeli soldiers, and said Suad sat next to the driver to direct him, and she led him to where the landmines were. The car blew up, and all the soldiers were killed. As for Suad, she became a shahida on the grass while smiling because she died for Palestine. So you've got this nice little young girl here, and the story of how she got into a jeep with Israeli soldiers and killed herself with them. This is being promoted for children. How old would you say? This is what's happening today in the Palestinian Authority. Now, once kids went on suicide attacks, Palestinian Authority turned them into heroes. And I want to show you how this was done. These 3 15-year-old boys went in a suicide attack, and instead of teaching other children, don't do what they did, they turned them into role models, and this is how they did it. First of all, here's the poster. The Popular Resistance Committee proudly announced the falling of the 3 shaheeds. They're proud of this. This is the message, and listen to the words.
أما الشهيد محمد وكان دوما يتمنى الشهادة بالرغم من صغر سنه ولكنهما سيظلا متفوقين في عيون كل إنسان فلسطيني متفوقين
Okay, 15-year-old boys went on a suicide mission, and they are outstanding. They're role models. This is what they're being taught. Now, the results is that Palestinian kids today are talking 70 to 80% in different polls, 3 different polls. 70 to 80% of the kids aspire death for Allah. Now listen to these 2 11-year-old girls, and you'll get a sense of how deep this is in the society.
أنت بوعيك حكيت عن الشهادة كشيء جميل، أنت بتعتقد إنه شيء جميل؟
الشهادة كتير شيء جميل جدا جدا، كل الناس بتتمنى الشهادة.
أيوه.
لأنه يعني إيش في أحلى من إنك تروحي على الجنة.
طب مين أفضل؟ السلام مع وجود حقوق كاملة للشعب الفلسطيني ولا الشهادة؟
الشهادة. أنا أخذ حقي بعدين أستشهد، لأنه بدنا نعيش إحنا طفولتنا حياتنا.
ماشي. يسرا أنت راضية بالكلام هذا؟
طبعا الشهادة أحلى، لأنه إحنا هلا بدناش الدنيا، بدنا الآخرة. أيوة. مش الدنيا اللي حتفيدنا الآخرة.
Okay, we benefit not from this life, but from the afterlife. They are 11-year-old girls convinced that the best they can do in life is not be doctors, not be lawyers, not aspire to anything other than to die. And this is the result of the brainwashing in the Palestinian Authority. Now, the final thing I just want to touch on, and I could literally spend 2 hours just on this topic. Is this just Israel's problem, or is it the world's problem? Is it your problem as well? When we have an ideology, when we have a society who is taught with such sophistication to hate, whose problem is it? And I want to show you that the hatred that you've seen toward Jews in Israel is the main part of the PA ideology, but it's not the only part. Israel is presented as the branch of West, in the Middle East, and I want to show you the real target is the entire world. Here is one of these religious leaders again on PATV.
أين ذهبت بريطانيا العظمى؟ أين ذهبت روسيا القيصرية؟ أين ذهبت ألمانيا النازية؟ أين ذهبت كل هذه القوى؟ الذي أذهبها سيذهب أمريكا بإذن الله تعالى. لقد حكمنا الدنيا وسيأتي يوم والله نحكم فيه كل الدنيا.
Okay, we ruled the world before, we'll rule the world again. This sounds like Al-Qaeda, and yet it's coming from the Palestinian Authority, because in fact there is no basic difference between, and we heard before, is it radical Islam or Islam? This is presented by the world as regular Islam, and this is coming from mainstream Palestinian religious leaders. Now, because of all this hate ideology against the West as well, I want you to see 65% of Palestinians support Al-Qaeda actions in the USA and Europe. This is a poll, and it's very significant, the date here. December 2005, this was before the Hamas election. This was at a time that Europe was giving hundreds of millions of dollars a year to the Palestinians. The United States was giving $200 million a year to the Palestinians, and yet 65% of the Palestinians wanted religious terrorism against the United States and Europe. How could this be? And the answer is very simple. Because when it came to balancing their religious allegiance to their religious leaders, who said, kill the West, kill the Jews, kill the Christians, kill the infidels, and people who are giving them money, their religious allegiance is stronger. So you've got 65% of Palestinians. This is while they were receiving the money. Now there's been a boycott. It certainly is much higher. But this is under the best of conditions. You've got an overwhelming majority, and the United States continues to pour money today into the Palestinian Authority. Now, this is on the Hamas website, and this is indicative of the same message. Here you see, this isn't Israel's flag, this is the United States being ripped up. This is their goal. We will rip you apart like you ripped our unity apart. This is the text here on the Hamas website. Now, I want to show you two examples of, I'm going to show you how this plays out even in Israel, in one of the United States' closest friends in the Arab world. This is Egypt. This is a video clip that was produced, as opposed to everything else which was government, this was produced privately in Egypt, but it's significant coming out of Egypt. I want you to see this.
الصورة والكتابة الصورة والكتابة الصورة والكتابة أمريكا وإسرائيل دول خلوا الدنيا غابة وولعوا الفتيل أمريكا فردة جناحها ما عادش يهمها مش لاقي حد يحوشها ولا حد يلمها شوية يقول إيران وبعد شوية سوريا ويأثر في الكلام لو حد قال له كوريا ما كانش حتة برج يا ناس يا خلقه وبالتأكيد صحابه هم اللي وقعوه وبالتأكيد صحابه هم اللي وقعوه هم اللي وقعوه بحجة الإرهاب.
Okay, unbelievable. The two enemies of the humanity, according to the Egyptians again are receiving over $1 billion in American aid. Israel and the United States, two sides of the same coin. These are the enemies. And sometimes people say to me, oh, this is just a cartoon for kids. And I say, oh yes, just don't say just a cartoon for kids. This is what the kids throughout the Middle East are growing up on. This is a very popular video throughout the entire Arab world. Now, I want to just show you two final slides, again, to get a sense of the depths of what we're dealing with here. This is a picture of a boy named Oren Almog. This is a boy who my son got to know. My son does volunteer work in the summers and throughout the year with children who have either themselves been injured or who've lost close relatives in suicide terror. Now this boy, my son was with him in summer camp, and this picture was taken at the summer camp. His name is Oren Almog. He lost both his eyes. He has no vision. He's blinded in a Haifa restaurant vomiting. In addition to being blinded, his brother, father, and both grandparents were killed. He was killed by a terrorist named Hanadi Jaradat, who killed, in addition to them, 21 other people. Now, I just want to show you what the Palestinian Ministry of Education did with Hanadi Jaradat, who did this event. This is from just a year ago. The Ministry of Culture produced an entire poetry collection. The poetry collection was called What Did Hanadi Say? and the whole collection was dedicated to the Rose of Palestine, the Iris of Mount Carmel, the martyr for Allah, Hanadi Jaradat. And some of the words in the first poem, which was dedicated to glorifying her, "O my beloved, I long for Haifa. O Hanadi, Hanadi, the flag of the nation is not flying the jihad. Hanadi, Hanadi, shake the earth under the feet of the enemies, blow it up." Hanadi said, "It is my wedding. It is the wedding of Hanadi, the day when death as a martyr for Allah becomes the highest goal that liberates my land." This is what the Palestinian Authority does to suicide terrorists who wipe out families like she did, like Hanadi Jaradat. And this is what we're facing. The Palestinian society, it's not just, people say the media inside, it's not just the media, it's the Ministry of Culture, it's the Ministry of Education, it's the school books, it's the streets that are named after terrorists, it's the sporting events, it is everywhere. It is an entire terror society. These are the people we're facing now. 56% of the parliament is Hamas, and the world is not aware or not interested in being aware. And again, remember the final thing. It is not just Israel's problems. For these kids to get on a plane, when they grow up and reach the United States, all it is one plane flight. So this is everyone's problem. This is the world's problem. The Palestinian Authority is bringing up the generation that will be, literally, will be the foundation for world suicide terror for many, many years. We bring this here, we bring this to governments around the world, not because we're interested in making the Palestinians look bad, because we realize this is a real threat. And it is places like this, where congressmen are, where senators are, where those people who can influence the Palestinian Authority have to hear this. Because it's only the pressure and the leverage from those people, from people like you, to your congressmen, to your senators, who can literally put the screws on the Palestinians financially and politically, so that this will change. Because if they don't change, the future will be terror for everyone. And our goal, of course, is to have it change so that we can have peace in the next generation. Do whatever you can. Make sure that the agenda for the future is not a peace agreement, but is peace education. Thank you.
Thank you, Etzni. Our next speaker, you want to stand up and stretch a minute? Yeah, all right, stand up and stretch a minute while we introduce our next speaker.
He won't mind. Yeah.
Our next speaker is Elyakim HaEtzni. He's a former member of the Knesset. He's co-founder of Gamla Shall Not Fall Again. He's an attorney. He resides at Kiryat Arba. He's one of the founders of the settlement movement in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. One of the founders of the settlement movement. He started at Hebron, right? Kiryat Arba. That began the settlement movement. He's a friend, a longtime friend and advisor to the Battalion of Deborah. Welcome, Elyakim HaEtzni. Welcome, brother.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I am still under the impact of what we saw here, under the spell of what we saw here, and it is some contradiction for me to speak about what happens inside this threatened community, this threatened people, nation, state, threatened by such a Islamo-Nazi culture. The question, but I think it is a good thing that what I have to say is coming directly after that. Because the question you should ask yourself, how does a community, a state, which is under such a terrible shadow, how do we defend ourselves? I don't mean how many arms do we purchase. How do we fortify ourselves psychologically against such an onslaught. The first thing I want to tell you is that what we have seen, what you have seen here now, is not shown to the Israeli public. We have 3 television networks, and they compete in covering this up, not showing it, neither to our youth, nor to our general public. And I must say that I am so much versed in all this. Much of what we saw here was new to me. Why is it so? Why do they hide the Israeli establishment? Why does it deliberately hide from us these terrible facts, which we need to know in order to defend ourselves? The answer is because this would be harmful to peace with a capital P. Because if we knew these facts and if we internalized them, then we would not, worship this false God called peace. This is the problem. This is why we are not allowed to know the truth, which here, thousands of miles away, you can see, not in Israel. Now, I wanted to speak about the days of Elijah. Why days of Elijah? When I saw this caption, I was very surprised, because this was like some genius who had invented this. Because I am speaking about one day of Elijah, the day of Elijah on the Mount Carmel, when he was confronting 450 prophets of the false god, of the idol Baal, and 400 of another idol, and he was one. And what he said, he addressed the people of Israel and said to them, choose. You have to choose. And truly, after this war of 35 days, we undergo a moment when the people of Israel must choose. So let me begin with quoting from this one day of Elijah. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, how long halt ye between 2 opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. And if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. This question the people of Israel is being asked